Hi, pen friends. It's Kristi here from Optimal Wellness Yoga. I am so excited that I have completed 21 days of this 30-day challenge. So I'm doing what I encourage my clients to do frequently, and that is celebrate the small wins. So I have done this for 3 weeks, and I've been learning a fair amount on this journey as well. So that's really exciting. For week 3, we start with Conklin Blue and we end here with Stipula Saffron. It's been a bit of a low energy week for me, a bit of a challenging week. They've been tearing up our street and it's been lots of noise and I've been very dysregulated. And I found myself procrastinating on doing my transcriptions and my Zentangles because I just didn't want to sit here in my basement where I don't have any natural light. And my setup isn't super comfortable if I'm having pain days. I'm at a taller desk and sit on a stool without a back. So it's not as comfortable either. So this week, we're going to pare back the video stuff yet again. And I'm just going to show you the results. So here's what the month looks like so far. I did have an oops, and we'll go into that a little later. Let me find the beginning of this week in the transcription notebook. There we go. We start over here with, this is the Conklin Blue. It's just your standard, older fountain pen company blue ink. I had it in the Jinhao 86, which is the Parker 51 knockoff with the hooded with the hooded nib. And I already cleaned this out because this was Friday's pen, and I've been sitting down and cleaning out pens on Sunday afternoons so far this month. So I can't show that one to you in the pen, but as expected with a fine nib, it gives me the line I like my handwriting in. It was a teeny bit scratchy, and this is actually the only one of my set of 3 where I think the nib could actually use a slight bit of tuning. And then I went real basic on the Zentangle again. I decided, since I'm kind of out of practice, that I would just work on doing a bit more of the mono tangles where there's just one tangle or maybe one tangle and an accent of another. So this is, I can't remember, maybe Vertigo. I don't remember for sure. It's one that can also be turned into looking like feathers if you make the ends of these pointy, or even make them a little thinner. And I added a little variation on tipple with these little kind of almost berry-like things along the edge. I did very, very minimal in the way of shading here, so if you don't pick it up, that doesn't surprise me. But I was kind of not feeling it. I was kind of anxious to just be done with it, so I didn't spend a ton of time on the shading. And that's okay, because ultimately, the practice is meant to take 15 to 20 minutes, not an hour, like some of mine have taken, so that's okay. And to see the rating here in the weekly, so here we are, starting at last Friday, the Conklin Blue. And I found it to be a pretty decent combo. The nib could use a tiny bit of work because I had an occasional skip. But I also actually found it loud on the heavy Tomoe River paper again. And maybe smoothing it out would help that a little bit. On this paper, it was fine. I'm not a huge blue fan, and there's nothing spectacular about this blue, so I gave it a C+, maybe slightly better than serviceable, but nothing to seek out necessarily. But it was a free to us ink from the 2016 DC Super Show pen show, so I'm not going to complain. On Saturday, we had this poem, Sorcery by Nikita Gill. These are all from her book Wild Embers, and I'm just going in order. We had Diamine Sherwood Green, which I think is just like a really nice darkish green, just nice and kind of neutral, kind of my idea of dark green, and I definitely would not be opposed to adding this one to our bottle collection. I had it in the Jinhao 159. This is one of the larger pens. It has a number 8 nib, and I specifically bought this pen just to try out a larger number 8 without breaking the bank and spending a lot of money on something without knowing that it would suit me okay. This pen is remarkably light, which I'm not a fan of. I want a little bit of weight, but the writing experience was good. I enjoyed it. The nib on there was an extra fine. The tangling was fun. This is a tangle called Yin Cut, if I remember correctly. And I got a little more detailed on the shading in parts, but then I think my dog needed to go out, so I just kind of left it as is. I may go back and finesse what shading is there just a little bit more. But this tangle always makes me think of the old restaurant booths that would have the buttons in the back, so it was kind of like quilted. I always think of these as kind of the dark spots as kind of the buttons in the upholstery, so I kind of enjoy that. And then the rating on this one, I gave a B. It was a nice combo. The number 8 nib was nice. I can't say that I noticed anything from this particular experience to be like, ooh, number 8s are so much better than number 6s. But it was a, pretty small sample of using it. So we'll see. Plus it's just, your standard Jinhao nibs. So I don't know how I would feel if, say, I got a gold nib or even something just a little more finessed. So it felt smooth and the flow was steady, and there was actually shading in the writing. You can especially see it here. I've even got maybe maybe not. I was gonna say maybe a bit of sheening, but no, it's just that it shaded to almost a green black here. And that's nice because I love the fine nibs, the fine and extra fines, but I like shading, and it's hard to get both. So I gave this one a B. It's better than average. Again, like I said, I wouldn't mind adding this ink to our bottle collection, and it felt super smooth on this lighter weight Tomoe River. All of these I'd be excited to try on the new Sanzen Tomoe River, and I could because I'm definitely going to have extra days. I just haven't yet. This week I haven't tried it on a dot grid, but last Sunday before I emptied everything out, I did a little bit of just practice with the different pens and the different nib sizes and inks just to get a feel, and I did it on the Rodeo dot grid because this is the paper I usually write to my pen pals on. I usually decorate it with stickers and that, so I just wanted to see how these looked on there, and I'll probably do this before I empty out this week's pens. So Sunday had us with the Noodlers Flex. Again, I don't know. I think this is an Ahab, but it could be a Conrad. It was gifted to me. The stuff on the band and the clip just say Noodlers, so I'm not sure, and I'm not up on the models. I think I misspoke the last time this pen was up and said there was no tipping, but there is actually tipping on here. It's just not a lot, in part because it's a fine nib, so you still are going to expect some feedback from it. The ink, oh my gosh, I fell in love with the ink, and I'm so glad that it was one of the 4mm samples from Van Ness. It's Wearingeul Sanshiro, and this is my idea of, this is my idea of a yellow ink. I guess because it leans to the cooler side, more kind of green and away from the orange that you see so many of the legible yellows lean. I'm just loving it. It's like It reminds me of the ripe wheat fields and oat fields back home. It reminds me of the color of the oak leaves just before they fall here. I did slow myself down and I made myself do flex throughout this transcription. And I did improve. I got just a wee bit of angle to my writing, but the Ahab just definitely requires a lot of pressure to flex it out, but it looked gorgeous in this ink. So we got lots of shading. Really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the Zentangle too here. Let me pull that out. The color picked up nicely, so I could get some good shading. I liked having the option of a flex pen, so I could make some of these lines heavier to really delineate those outlines. And overall, I liked it. I did find, because this paper isn't as smooth as either Tomoe River, I did pick up some fibers with this nib on this paper, so that would be something to just keep aware of. And I did end up with some feathering when I put down more pressure, because it floods a lot of ink on that page, and this is ultimately just a generic drawing pad. It's not necessarily meant for heavy use of watery pigment or dyes, so I'm not surprised to see a little feathering. It doesn't bother me on this one, so that's fine. I gave the combo a B. I love, love, love the ink. It's really the pen that's drawing that down. On the ink, I'd probably give it an A, because I just have a hard time thinking there isn't something better out there. So I'm excited to have enough of this ink to put it in a few other pens. So I'm sure watch this space and see what it looks like in other pens in the time to come. So following this, I actually drew my other flex pen. So I really appreciated being able to put the pens one right after the other. This is my other modern flex nib pen. I only have these two. This one has a gold nib though, and it is from Pilot. This is a Pilot Falcon, and it's an extra soft nib, which is their modern flex equivalent. It doesn't go super broad, but the nib bounces back really well, so you can get really strong, thick thins. Because I didn't have to push as hard, I felt like my handwriting was a little more representative of my regular handwriting. So if you compare particularly these two, because they have kind of a similar average line width, I think you might be able to say the person who wrote this, or vice versa. So I was much happier with my writing with this one. And also, I don't know if I can manage at all to capture it, but this ink is Tomoe and Lin's Kaleidoscope Ibuki. And I swatched it a few weeks back in my ink swap video, and I made a grave mistake. I forgot to look at the bottom of the vial to see if there was anything that had precipitated out to the bottom. And so I had missed that this was actually a shimmer ink. I just about had a little heart attack putting a shimmer ink in my Pilot Falcon, because I had always said at that price point I would not mess around with specialty inks, especially shimmers. But I went with it, and I'm so glad I did, because if you haven't had a Pilot Con 70, I think it is, and I don't know, maybe they put it in all of theirs, but Pilot has agitators. This one has a little column bead sort of thing in it. Some of my other ones have a couple just little bearings in them. I can hear it when I'm writing, and I'm not a fan of that, but man, I think that agitator made the difference for the sheen. It just really pops, and maybe I can pick it up here on the weeks a little easier, because it does really pop off the page there, even more so than on the heavier Tomoe River, and it is just gorgeous. The sheen is very small particles, so I think that might have been part of the reason it came out so nice and even. But I don't have stops and starts in my transcription on the shimmer. It's all there. I love the color. Yes, it's very lightweight, but it is just a classic, nice tan. I don't know. I just really love it. I don't know, aside from, or actually, I don't know where one gets Tomo and Lynn's ink, so I'll have to do a little research, but I would not be opposed to that one joining our collection either. And I'll have to try an experiment because I do have 2 of the Diamine shimmer inks and in bottles, so I'm going to have to try those in my Falcon and see if the agitator is really the secret or if there's some secret to like the size of the shimmer and the ink composition of this Tomo and Lynn's to keep that shimmer flowing nice and evenly. The Zentangle, nothing's super like earth-shattering here, but I had to try this one because it utilizes our little our nib testing swirlies. And then you just kind of go in and you kind of outline it several times. And then I decided to go back in to add a little dimension and pattern between 2 of those outlines. And I did take the water brush and spread that out a little bit. I would say the first lines, which were the testing, they did not get really much in the way of shimmer there. I think the pen was pretty dry though, because my upstrokes, I had to actually go back in and put those in. You see there's just tiny evidence of railroading there. So I maybe could have agitated the pen before taking it to paper and maybe given it a few moments with the tip side down just to get that feed resaturated, because in general I store my pens flat. But overall, I enjoyed it, and this is definitely an ink I would love to play with. And I'd love to come back and play with my metallic watercolors here as well. So I actually gave this combo an A, which is my highest rating so far. I couldn't quite give it an A+, because in my mind, an A+ is like, I'm never putting any other ink in this pen again. And there's just too many different things I want to do with a flex nib to commit to one color. So I couldn't give it an A+, but top-notch performance, best one of the month so far. Tuesday the 19th brings us to my Lamy All-Star again, and this is a fine nib. And it has the Pilot Iroshizuku Syo-ro, which is one of the 2 kind of turquoisey teal. I got a sample of both this and the Kujaku, which we did a little earlier this month, because I couldn't decide between the 2, and I still can't decide between the 2. And now I'm not sure either is necessary, because we have things like Birmingham, Penco, Heron that is in that general direction. So, but I did on this lighter weight Tomoe River get a bit of the red sheening on it, which I do kind of like. It's not like in your face red, and it only happens in the darkest spots. It isn't overwhelming, that base color, which is an issue that we have with the Quantum Teal from Birmingham. It just reads burgundy basically because the sheening just dominates everything. I did not get the sheening showing up on the heavier Tomoe River. I did get nice shading, but there's not really any sheen here. And as happened the last time we had this pen, the fine on the Lamy, because it's Western, is just a little too broad for my taste. I still feel that this looks kind of like I wrote it with a magic marker. You know, fine liner magic marker, but a magic marker nonetheless. And because of that shaped grip, reverse writing to fit into cramped areas or the smaller grid boxes of my planners, like the Hobonichi and the Common Planner, just really isn't comfortable. So I'm thinking no more Lamys in my future, and possibly trying to kind of replace them in my lineup because they're kind of one of my knockabout pens. Like the flow tends to be really good, which makes for a nice smooth experience, but it gives me too long of a line or too broad of a line and I can't reverse right. And I don't know, the only thing would be if I could get like a 5-pack of extra fine nibs, that would hold me through. But so far I haven't noticed that. I thought I used to see 5-packs before, but now it looks like they're what, $12 to $16 a nib. And if I buy an extra fine to fit all of my Lamy Safaris and All Stars, I could just as well buy like a really nice pen. So I'm not sure where I'm going to go from here. Maybe one or twosie pick up a Lamy nib in extra fine when I need to hit a free shipping threshold. I don't know. We'll see. Wednesday, this is where we had the little mistake on the monthly page. So let's go back and revisit that. I saw J. Herbin 1670 and my brain just picked up the Emerald of Chivor sample vial instead. And I put that down, but it ended up being a happy accident because you'll see up here, the swatch is just unremarkable. I think I went way too light on how much ink I put down because the first day, the size of my swatch kind of got out of control. So then I overcompensated and ended up with a less than stellar swatch. So it worked out because now I have it represented here. And I just took the real color, which was the brown with gold shimmer that I cannot pronounce, the Caroube de Chypre? I don't know. No French blood, so I'm not as embarrassed this time that I can't pronounce it. But if you speak French, or at least the French ink names, please leave a comment down below and tell me how to pronounce this one. But I just kept it on the Wednesday column and put it down here and drew a line. It's all fine. And this is amazing coming from a recovering perfectionist. So, just do what works, make it work for you. Which, is kind of the mantra for this week since I'm not doing the whole elaborate cut and process videos for this week. I hope this is okay. I hope you like it, but I would like to know, like going forward, what is your preference here? Oh, oops, I forgot to show you the tangle from the Syo-ro Iroshizuku. Here it is. This is just called Fluke, I think. Again, another one of those great grid patterns. I like those because I can be pretty much brain dead and do them. But I also just like geometrics. I like squares. I like circles. I like squares so much that back probably a decade or more ago now, I knit myself a cardigan and I went to a ton of trouble to put wooden square buttons on it. It looked amazing. But because the wood buttons shouldn't go through the wash and I didn't want to have to cut them off every time I needed to wash the sweater, I got button cover hardware and I mounted them onto button covers and put just standard clear buttons on the sweater. It was just a whole thing. It was worth it in the end, though. I enjoyed it. Back to our brown ink from J. Herbin. I got no shimmer here, whether that's this paper or the pen. I'm not sure. As you can tell, it's a real fine line. The ink was in my Kaweco Sport, which has an extra fine nib, because I am starting to just default to extra fine with Western nibs and fine with Eastern nibs in general. And then I think this is my favorite tangle of the week. I knew because of the super fine lines and the gold shimmer that I wanted to do this bubbles pattern, which is what this is called, bubbles with a Z, I think. And then the center one is kind of a variation on Onomato, I believe. It shaded nicely. I did get some shimmer coming through on this one. Again, I don't know if I can get the camera to pick up on it. This would be another really fun one to come back in with the metallic watercolors. But again, I'm trying to set limits with myself and try to make these just a small practice to like meditate and regulate myself at some point during the day. I'd like to do them in the morning, but it doesn't always happen that way. But overall, I enjoyed it, even though the shimmer didn't come through. But because the shimmer didn't come through, it's not one that I would be seeking a full-size bottle for. And it didn't even come through on the lighter weight Tomoe River. So I gave it a C+. I do like this kind of reddish brown. That was lovely. And it was noisy on the heavier Tomoe River paper, but even on this paper. So not a favorite. I mean, part of that's the extra fine nib, of course, because it's just not as wet. I feel like I have a little bit of leeway with this line width, so I may do a little bit of work on the nib to make it write a little wetter. I know Pens and Tea likes to make her sports nice and juicy, so I might give that a go. I mean, I can always get another nib unit if I make it wetter than I would like, and then I would be able to I'd be able to switch off the nibs. If I knew I was putting a drier ink in, I could put the wetter nib unit in, so that is fine. Well, we have it here. I'm going to show you the final ink of the week. It's Stipula Saffron, and this is the other direction that legible yellow inks tend to go, and that is more towards the orange. It makes me think of the Noodler's Southwest Sunset, which we have a bottle of with the old name, and I've hardly used because I ended up opting towards habanero whenever I wanted the kind of orangey color. I went with the little darker, but it did shade beautifully. And what is interesting is this is in the X450 with the really thick Fude nib. Oh, actually they look comparable. I was thinking this one, this ink maybe flowed a little more moderately than the Diamine Oxblood. This Fude is a very broad Fude, so which is really like the width is going to be from the tip to the bend. That's going to be the width of the line you're going to make in general, as long as you put that whole part of the nib flat on the paper. And I felt like I didn't get quite as broad a lines with this ink as I did with the Oxblood. I think because the ink is not quite as flowing as Oxblood, but beautiful. It is relatively legible. I had mixed results on the Zentangle. It did shade quite well, but coloring didn't go so well because the paper is more absorbent. The colored in areas, you can really see like strokes and stuff, where I thought because of the broad line of the Fude, it would color in really well, but it just made it kind of blotchy. So that would need a little work, maybe just done on paper with more sizing. Like if I did this same tangle in the transcription notebook, it could possibly turn out a little cleaner looking. But overall, you know, Zentangle is more about the process than the end result, which is also something that I need practice with, so that works well. And I will say that overall I have gotten to the point of, you know, kind of setting a time limit, kind of just being okay with the tangles however they are, and not really like spending tons and tons of time with the shading and stuff, which I was prone to do. Like I would have an hour to a 3 hour on a standard Zentangle tile, which if I remember right is a 4x4, or maybe it's 3x3 like these are cut. I don't remember, but it was not unusual for me to spend an hour or longer on a Zentangle. So it's good for me to do these more like 20-minute, 30-minute bite ones, because that's really what the practice is meant to be. So there we have it. My third full week at 30 days, or 30 inks, 30 days. I always want to mix those around. I don't know why. I have ideas coming up for what I'm going to do in October. It's not 30 inks, 30 days, but it's another sort of challenge for me to learn more about my inks and about my pens. So I'll be sharing that sometime in this upcoming week, I think, as I finalize the details of how I want to move forward. And yes, you did see more transcription in the notebook. I've worked ahead just a little bit. Saturdays, I get really worn out by the afternoon because I've spent all morning facilitating yoga therapy and staying behind and answering questions and doing a little bit of teaching for a yoga therapy training program. So when that's done, I don't want to be on camera anymore, and I often take a long nap and then just kind of game or that. So I've already done Fridays and Saturdays transcription. I still have their Zen tangles to do, but I've just been mixing it up and not forcing myself to come sit at this desk under these lights and record the process. So let me know what you think, if this overview is okay, if you really enjoyed the process ones. That's something that is good for me to know moving forward. I do plan to still do some of those. I just didn't have the spoons for them this week. And that's really kind of the basis of my practice as a spoony yoga therapist, is to help people work on meeting themselves where they are and practicing radical acceptance of where they are and adjusting to make things work. And so that's what I did. I adjusted, I adapted, I modified this week. So please be kind to yourselves, meet yourselves where you are in this week to come. And until I see you again, be safe and be well. Aho. And so it is. Bye, guys. Thanks for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button. Leave a comment below. I'd really appreciate it. I read them all, and right now I'm still able to reply to them all. So have a wonderful week. Bye.